Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maraha Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasme Sri Gurave Namaha. Om Guru Ganana Antva Ganapatigam Mavamahe Kavin Kavinam Upavashram Jeshtarajam Brahmanan Brahmanaspata Anushrunnota Visida Sadhanam. Om Mahaganadipataye Namaha. Om Keshwaya Namaha. Om Narayana Namaha. Om Govindaya Namaha. Vishnuve Namaha, Masudanaయ Namaha, Trivikramaయ Namaha, Vamanaయ Namaha, Sridharaya Namaha, Hrishikeshaya Namaha, Padmanabhaya Namaha, Damodaraయ Darshanaయ Namaha, Vasudevaya Namaha, Pradyumnaya Namaha, Niruddhaya Namaha, Purushottamaya Namaha, Adokshaya Namaha, Narasimhaya Namaha, Achyutaya Namaha, Janardhanaya Namaha, Upendraya Namaha, Hare Namaha, Sri Krishna. Hari Om. Dear friends, we came to the chapter 13. In this chapter, Lord Brahma is going to hide the covered boys and also the calves of the cows. And this description is being given in this chapter. Just a few words about Bhagavad Purana. This Mahabhagavad Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode in Dwapara, end of Dwapara. Accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc., persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the Kali Yuga shall get light from this Purana. So, the timeless wisdom of India is expressed in the Vedas, ancient Sanskrit texts that touch upon all fields of human knowledge, originally preserved through oral tradition. The Vedas were first put into writing 5,000 years ago by Sri Vyasa Maharshi, the literary incarnation of God himself. After compiling the Vedas, Vyasa Maharshi set forth their essence in the aphorisms known as Vedanta Sutras. Srimad Bhagavatam is Vyasa Maharshi's commentary on his own Vedanta Sutras. It was written in the maturity of his spiritual life under the direction of Narada Muni. His spiritual master, Vyasa Maharshi, was sitting near the Saraswati river, bank of Saraswati river, where his ashrama is situated, near Badrika ashrama. And Narada Muni came to the spiritual master, came and discussed with him and requested Vyasa Maharshi to write about Krishna Leela and all the avatars of Narayana. Narada Muni, his spiritual master, referred to as the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic literature. Srimad Bhagavatam is the most complete and authoritative exposition of Vedic knowledge. After compiling the Bhagavatam, Vyasa Maharshi impressed the synopsis of it upon his son, the sage Shuka Maharshi. Shukadeva Goswami, or Shuka, is son of Vyasa Maharshi, subsequently recited the entire Bhagavatam to Maharaja Parikshit in an assembly of learned saints in the bank of Gangas at Hastinapura, near, now it is New Delhi. Maharaja Parikshit was the emperor of the world, and he was a great Rajarshi, saintly king. Having received a warning that he would die within a week, he renounced this entire kingdom and retired to the bank of Gangas to fast until death and receive spiritual enlightenment by Shuka Maharshi. The Bhagavatam begins with Emperor Parikshit's sober inquiry to Shukadeva Mahaswami. You are the spiritual master of great saints and devotees. I am therefore begging you to show the way of perfection for all persons, and especially for one who is about to die in 7 days. Please let me know what a man should hear, chant, remember, and worship, and also what he should not do. Please explain all this to me. This is the Parikshit asking Shuka Maharshi, and Shuka is telling answer to his question. Shuka answered to this question and numerous other questions posed by Maharaj Parikshit concerning everything from the nature of the self to the origin of universe, held the assembled sages in rapt attention continuously for 7 days leading to the king's death. The sage Sutta Goswami, who was present on the bank of the Gangas when Shuka Maharshi was first recited Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit Raja, later repeated the Bhagavatam before a gathering of sages in the forest of Naimisharanya. The Naimisharanya is a place between Kanpur and Ayodhya in the Uttar Pradesh, and it's a very nice place. It's a very auspicious place, Naimisharanya. Those sages concerned about the spiritual welfare of the people in general had gathered to perform a long, continuous chain of sacrifices to counteract the degrading influence of the incipient age of Kali Yuga. The speciality of the Naimisharanya village is a very special thing. Because Kali Yuga started and Kali is expanding his influence on the majority of the world area, all the great saints and rishis went to Brahma, requesting to select a place where they can sit and do the sacrifices in Yajna Yaga in praising Lord Narayana. And Brahma selected by the place by he made a wheel on his index finger with using the darba. That wheel, he left the wheel to go and land on a certain place. Like a chakra, it came, the wheel of darba came down and landed in the Naimisharanya, the place. So Brahma said, wherever this wheel is going to stay permanently, that place, Kali is cannot going to trouble you. You can do your yajna and yaga sacrifices, and you can do all the rituals there in that place. That's how the Naimisharanya came to existence. The Naimisharanya, when there is a Brahma Chakra came and landed on that place, it becomes Chakra Tirtha. People go to Naimisharanya, will have a dip in the water in Chakra Tirtha because it's so auspicious and created by Lord Brahma. These sages concerned about the spiritual welfare of the people in general had gathered in to perform a long continuous chain of yajnas to counteract the degrading influence of the incipient age of Kali Yuga. In response to the sages' request that he speak the essence of Vedic wisdom, Suta Goswami repeated from memory the entire 18,000 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam as spoken by Shuka Maharshi to Parikshit Raj. So here you need to understand, get confused sometimes people. First, there is a conversation between Shuka and Parikshit Maharaj. And this conversation covers the whole entire 18,000 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit Raj. And during the discussion with Parikshit Raj and Shuka Maharshi, Suta Maharshi is also there present at the time of Shuka Maharshi is telling. By this information, what he gathered, Suta Maharshi is going to reveal to all the other saints gathered in Naimisharanya later as a second conversation. There's a conversation between Parikshit Raj and Shuka Maharshi is going on one side, and there's a conversation between Suta Maharshi and other Suta Puranika and other Maharshis in the Naimisharanya taking place. And also there will be a discussion between Maitreya and Vidura in the middle. The reader of Srimad Bhagavatam here, Suta Goswami, relate to the questions of Maharaja Parikshit and the answers of Shuka Maharshi. Also, Suta Goswami sometimes responds directly to questions put by Shaunaka Rishis, the spokesman for the sages gathered at Naimisharanya. One therefore simultaneously hears two dialogues, one between Maharaj Parikshit and Shukadeva on the bank of Ganges, another at Naimisharanya between Suta Maharnika and the sages of Naimisharanya forest, headed by Shaunaka Rishi. Furthermore, while instructing King Parikshit, Shuka Maharshi often relates historical episodes and gives accounts, lengthy philosophical discussions between such great souls as the saint Maitreya and his disciple Vidura. With this understanding, the history of Bhagavatam, the reader will easily be able to follow its intermingling of dialogues and events from various sources. Since philosophical wisdom, not chronological order, is most important in the text, one need only be attentive to the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam to appreciate fully its profound message. The translator of this edition compares the Bhagavatam to sugar candy wherever you taste it, it will find it equally sweet and relishable. Therefore, to taste the sweetness of Bhagavatam, one may begin by reading any of its volumes. After such an introductory taste, however, the serious reader is best advised to go back to volume 1 of the first canto and then proceed through the Bhagavatam, volume after volume, in its natural order. The edition of the Bhagavatam is the first complete English translation of this important text with an elaborate commentary, and it's the most widely available to the English-speaking public. It is the product of scholarly and devotional effort of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the world's most distinguished teacher of Indian religious and philosophical thought. His consummate Sanskrit scholarship and intimate familiarity with Vedic culture and thought, as well as the modern way of life, combine to reveal to the West magnificent exposition of this important classic, Sri Mahabhagavat Purana. Readers will find this work of value for many reasons. For those interested in the classical roots of Indian civilization, it serves as a vast reservoir of detailed information on virtually every one of its aspects. For students compared to philosophy and religion, Bhagavatam offers a penetrating view into the meaning of India's profound spiritual heritage. To sociologists and anthropologists, the Bhagavatam reveals the practical working of peaceful and scientifically organized Vedic culture, whose institutions were integrated on the basis of a highly developed spiritual worldview. Students of literature will discover the Bhagavatam to be a masterpiece of majestic poetry. For students of psychology, the text provides important perspectiveness on the nature of consciousness, human behavior, and the philosophical study of identity. Finally, to those seeking spiritual insight, the Bhagavatam offers simple and practical guidance for attainment of the highest self-knowledge and realization of the absolute truth. The entire multi-volume text presented by the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust promises to occupy a significant place in the intellectual, cultural, and spiritual life of modern man for a long time to come. That is the introduction of Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada has written for Bhagavad Purana. Now, the chapter 13. I will give a brief summary of the chapter 13 before going to the details of the shlokas and meaning. This chapter describes Lord Brahma's attempt to take away the calves and covered boys, and it also describes the bewilderment of Lord Brahma, and finally the clearance of his illusion. Although the incident concerning Aghasura had been performed 1 year before, when the covered boys were 5 years old, when they were 6 years old, they said it happened today. What happened was this: after killing Aghasura, Krishna, along with his associates, the covered boys, went for a picnic within the forest of Vrindavana. The calves, being allured by green grasses, gradually went far away. The cows, being allured by green grasses, gradually went far away. Therefore, Krishna's associates became a little agitated and wanted to bring back the calves. Krishna, however, encouraged the boys by saying, "You take your tiffin without being agitated. I shall go find the calves." And thus the Lord departed. Then just examine the potency of Krishna. Lord Brahma took away all the calves and covered boys and kept them in a secluded place. When Krishna was unable to find those calves and boys, he could understand that this was a trick performed by Lord Brahma. Then the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the causes of all causes, in order to please Lord Brahma, as well as his own associates and their mothers, expanded himself to become the calves and boys, exactly as they were before. In this way, he discovered another pastime. A special feature of this pastime was that the mothers of the covered boys thus became more attached to their respective sons, and the cows became more attached to their calves. After nearly a year, Balarama observed that all the covered boys and calves were expansion of Krishna. Thus he inquired from Krishna and was informed of what had happened. When the full year had passed, Brahma returned and saw that Krishna was still engaged as usual with his friends and the calves and cows. Then Krishna exhibited all the cows and cows boys as four-armed forms of Narayana. Then Krishna exhibited all the cows and all the covered boys as the form of four-armed forms of Narayana. Brahma could then understand Krishna's potency, and he is astonished by the pastimes of Krishna. His worshipable Lord Krishna, however, bestowed his causeless mercy upon Brahma and released him from illusion. The Brahma began to offer prayers to glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, in this chapter, the first shloka starts with Shuka Uvacha. Sadhu Prishtam Mahabhaga Toya Bhagavatottamaha Yannutanaya Sishasye Shunandrapikata Mahu. Shuka Maharshi is telling, O best of devotees, most fortunate Parikshit, you have inquired very nicely, for although constantly hearing the pastimes of the Lord, you are perceiving his activities to be newer and newer. Unless one is very advanced in Krishna consciousness, one cannot stick to hearing the pastimes of Lord constantly. Nityam Nava Navya Manam. Even though advanced devotees hear continually about the Lord Krishna for years, they still feel that these topics are coming them as newer and fresher. Therefore, such devotees cannot give up hearing of pastimes of Lord Krishna. Premanjana Churuta Bhakti Vilocherema Santaha Sadaiva Hrudayeshu Vilokayanti. The word Santaha is used to refer to persons who have developed love for Krishna. Yam Shamasundaram Achintya Guna Swarapam Govindam Adipurusham Tam Aham Bhajami. Parikshit Maharaja therefore is addressed as Bhagavatottama, the best of devotees, because unless one is very much elevated in devotional service, one cannot feel ecstasy from hearing more and more and appreciate the topics as ever fresher and newer. Satamayam sarabrutam nisargo yatartavani shruti chetasamapi pratikshanam navyabadachuttasya yat striya vitanamiva sadhuvartha. Paramahamsas, devotees who have accepted the essence of life, are attached to Krishna in the core of their hearts, and he is the aim of their lives. It is their nature to talk only of Krishna at every moment, as if such topics were newer and newer. They are attached to such topics just as materialists are attached to topics of woman and sex. The word Sarabhrutam means Paramahamsas. The Hamsa or a swan accepts milk from a mixture of milk and water and rejects the water. Similarly, the nature of persons who have taken a spiritual life and Krishna consciousness, understanding Krishna to be the life and soul of everyone, is that they cannot give up Krishna Katha or topics about Krishna at any moment. Such Paramahamsas always see Krishna within the core of the heart. Santaha Sadaiva Hrudayeshu Vilokayanti. Kama, desires, Krodha, anger, Bhaya, fear, are always present in the material world. But in the spiritual or transcendental world, one can use them for Krishna, Kamam, Krishna, Karmarpane. The desire of Paramahamsas, therefore, is to act always for Krishna. Krodham Bhakta Devsi Jane. They use anger against the non-devotees and transform Bhaya or fear into fear of being deviated from Krishna consciousness. In this way, the life of Paramahamsa devotee is used entirely for Lord Krishna, just as the life of a person attached to the material world is used simply for woman and money. What is day for the materialistic person is night for the spiritualist. What is very sweet for the materialist, namely woman and money, is regarded as poison by the spiritualist. This is the instruction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for the Paramahamsa. Krishna is everything, but for the materialist, woman and money are everything. But materialistic people who are in Kali Yuga, woman and money are everything for them. O king, kindly hear me with great attention. Although the activities of Supreme Lord are very confidential, no ordinary man being able to understand them. I shall speak about them to you. For spiritual masters explain to a submissive disciple even subject matters that are very confidential and difficult to understand. Then, after saving the boys and cows from the mouth of the Agasura, who was death personified, Lord Krishna, Supreme Personal Godhead, brought them all to the bank of the river and spoke the following words. My dear friends, just see how this river bank is extremely beautiful because of its pleasing atmosphere. And just see how blooming lotuses are attracting bees and birds by their aroma. The humming and chirping of the bees and birds is echoing throughout the beautiful trees in the forest. Also, here the sands are clean and soft. Therefore, this must be considered the best place for our sporting and pastimes. The description of Vrindavana forest as given herewith was spoken by Lord Krishna 5000 years ago, and the same condition prevailed during the time of the Vaishnava Acharyas 300 or 400 years ago. Kujata kokila hamsa sarasa ganaikarne maya urukule. Vrindavana's forest is always filled with the chirping and cooing of birds like cuckoos, kokila, ducks, hamsa, and cranes, sarasa, and is also full of peacocks, mayura kule. The same sounds and atmosphere still prevail in the area where our Krishna Balarama temple is situated in Vrindavana. Everyone who visits this temple is pleased to hear the chirping of the birds as described here. Kujata kokila hamsa sarasa. I had been to the Balarama and Krishna temple in Vrindavana. It is so pleasant, and always there will be devotees, always plenty devotees to listen to the discussion there. I think we should take our. I recommend all the devotees to take a holiday to visit Vrindavana sometime in their life. Not now, during the Corona period, we can't go on holiday. I think we should. Krishna says to his friends, I think we should take our lunch here, since we are already hungry because of the time is very late. Here the cows may drink water and go slowly here and there and eat the grass. Accepting Lord Krishna's proposal, the cowherd boys allowed cows to drink water from the river Yamuna and then tied them to trees where there was a green, tender grass. Then the boys opened their baskets of food and began eating with Krishna in great transcendental pleasure. Like the whorl of a lotus flower, surrounded by its petals and leaves, Krishna sat in the center, enriched, encircled by lines of his friends, who all looked very beautiful. Every one of them was trying to look forward toward Krishna, thinking that Krishna might look toward him. In this way, they all enjoyed their lunch in the forest. To a pure devotee of Krishna is always visible as stated in the Brahma Samhita. Santa Sadaiva Hrudayeshu Vilokayanti, and as indicated by Krishna himself in Bhagavad Gita, Sarvatta Panipadam Tata Sarvota Kshiro Mukam. If by accumulating pious activities, Krita Punya Punajaha, one is raised to the platform of pure devotional service, Krishna is always visible in the core of one's heart. One who has attained such perfection is all beautiful in transcendental bliss. The present Krishna consciousness movement is an attempt to keep Krishna in the center. For if this is done, all activities will automatically become beautiful and blissful. Among the cowherd boys, some place their lunch on flowers, some on leaves and fruits, are bunches of leaves, some actually in their baskets, some on the bark of the trees, some on the rocks. This is what the children imagine to be their plates as they ate their lunch. All the cowherd boys enjoyed their lunch with Krishna, showing one another the different tastes of the different varieties of preparations they had brought from home. Tasting, tasting one another's preparations, they began to laugh and make one another laugh. Sometimes one friend would say, Krishna, see how my food is relishable. And Krishna would take some and laugh. Similarly, Balarama, Sudama, and other friends would taste one another's food and laugh. In this way, the friends very jubilantly began to eat their respective prepared preparations brought from home. Krishna is a Yajna Bhukta. That is, he eats only offering of Yajna, Yajna Bhukta. But to exhibit his childhood pastimes, he now sat with his flute tucked between his waist and his tight cloth on his right side, and with his horn, bugle, and cow driving stick on his left. Holding in his hand a very nice preparation of yogurt and rice with pieces of suitable fruit between his fingers, he sat like the whorl of a lotus flower, looking forward toward all his friends, personally joking with them and creating jubilant laughter among them as he ate. At that time, the denizens of heaven were watching, struck with wonder at how the personality of Godhead, who eats only in yajna, was now eating with his friends in the forest. When was eating with his cowherd boyfriends, a certain bumblebee came there to take part in eating. Thus Krishna joked, why have you come to disturb my Brahmana friend Madhumangala? You want to kill a Brahmana? This is not good. All the boys would laugh and enjoy, speaking such a joking words while eating. Thus the inhabitants of the higher planets were astonished at how the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who eats only when yajna is performed, was now eating like an ordinary child with his friends in the forest. O Maharaja Parikshit, while the cowherd boys who knew nothing within the core of their hearts but Krishna were thus engaged in eating their lunch in the forest, the calves went far away, deep into the forest, being allured by green grass. When Krishna saw that his friends, the cowherd boys, were frightened, the fierce controller, even of fear himself, said, just to mitigate their fear, my dear friends, do not stop eating. I shall go and bring your cows back to this spot by personally going after them myself. In the presence of Krishna's friendship, a devotee cannot have any fear. Krishna is the supreme controller, the controller of even death, which is supposed to be the ultimate fear in this material world. Bhayam. Dvitiya Shvetah Sayat. This fear arises because of lack of Krishna consciousness. If people get surrendered to Lord Krishna and deep into the Bhakti Yoga, reading with Krishna consciousness stories, Krishna Leela, and then there is no fear for Krishna devotees. For one who has taken shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna in this material world, fear becomes hardly dangerous at all. Let me go and search for the calves, Krishna said to his friends. Don't disturb your enjoyment. Then carrying his yogurt and rice in his hand, Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna immediately went out to reach for cows and his friends. To please his friends, he began searching in all the mountains, mountain caves, and bushes and narrow passages. The Vedas, Shvetashtotra assert that Supreme Personality of Godhead has nothing to do personally, natasya karyam karmanam cha vidyate, because he is doing everything through his energies and potencies. Parasya saktira vividva Vividaiva sruyate. Nonetheless, here we see that we took personal care to find the calves of his friends. This was Krishna's causeless mercy. Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sa characharam. All the affairs of the entire world and the entire cosmic manifestation are working under his direction. Through his different energies. Still, when there is a need to take care of his friends, he does this personally. Krishna assured his friends, do not be afraid. I am going personally to search for your calves. This was Krishna's causeless mercy. O Maharaja Parikshit, Brahma, who resides in the higher planetary system in the sky, had observed the activities of the most powerful Krishna in killing and delivering Aghasura, and he is astonished. Now that same Brahma wanted to show some of his own power and see the power of Krishna, who has engaged in his childhood pastimes, playing as if with ordinary covered boys. Therefore, in the Krishna's absence, Brahma took all the boys and calves to another place. Thus, he became entangled, for in the very near future, he would see how powerful Krishna was. When Aghasura was being killed by Krishna, when Aghasura was being killed by Lord Krishna, who was accompanied by his associates, Brahma was astonished. But when he saw that Krishna was very much enjoying his pastimes lunch, he was very much astonished and wanted to test whether Krishna was actually there. Thus he became entangled in Krishna's Maya. After all, Brahma was born materially, as mentioned here, Ambojanam Janaya. He is the born of Amboja, a lotus flower. It does not matter that he was born Amboja, a lotus flower. It does not matter that he was born of a lotus and not of any man, animal or animal father. A lotus is also a material, and anyone a lotus is also a material. Anyone born through a material energy must be subject to 4 material deficiencies. Brahma, the tendency to commit mistakes. Pramada is tendency to be illusioned. Vipralipsa, the tendency to cheat. Karana Patva, imperfect senses. Thus Brahma also became entangled. Brahma, with his Maya, wanted to test whether Krishna was actually present with the calves and the boys. These covered boys were but expansion of Krishna's personal self. Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhai Vitabhai. Later, Krishna would show Brahma how he expands himself into everything as his personal pleasure. Ananda Chinmaya Rasa. Hiladini Shaktir Asmat. Krishna has a transcendental potency called Hiladini Shakti. He does not enjoy anything that is product of the material energy. Brahma therefore would see Lord Krishna expand his energy. Brahma wanted to take away Krishna's associates, but instead he took away some other boys and calves. Ravana wanted to take away Sita, but that was impossible, and instead of he took away Maya Sita. Similarly, Brahma took away Mayarbaka, boys manifested by Krishna's Maya. Brahma took away the boys and calves and hide them in a different place. He could see the very near future. Mayar Bhaksha Istitu, this bewilderment, this Maya, was caused by Supreme Controller Prabhavata, the all-potent Supreme Person, Krishna, and we shall see the result. Anyone materially born is subject to bewilderment. This pastime is therefore anyone materially born is subject to bewilderment. This pastime is therefore called Brahma Vimochana Leela. Brahma Vimochana Leela. The pastime of bewildering Brahma. Mohitam Nabijanati Mam Ebhya Param Avyayam. Materially born persons cannot fully understand Krishna. Even the demigods cannot understand him. Mukhyanti yat surayaha tena brahma vrada ye adi kaveya. Everyone from Brahma down to the small insect, there must be killed. Everyone from Brahma down to the small insect must take lessons from Krishna. Thereafter, when Krishna was unable to find the calves, he returned to the bank of the river, but there he was also unable to see the covered boys. Thus he began to search for both the calves and the boys, as if he could not understand what had happened. Krishna could immediately understand that Brahma had taken away both calves and the boys. But as an innocent child, he searched here and there so that Brahma could not understand Krishna's Maya. This was all dramatic performance. A player knows everything, but still he plays on the stage in such a way that others do not understand him. When Krishna was unable to find the calves and the caretakers' boys anywhere in the forest, he could suddenly understand that this was the work of Lord Brahma. Although Krishna is a Vishwavit, the knower of everything happening in the entire cosmic manifestation is Vishwavit. As an innocent child, he showed ignorance of Brahma's actions, although he could immediately understand that these were the doings of Brahma. This pastime is called Brahma Vimochana Leela, the bewilderment of Brahma. Brahma was already bewildered by Krishna's activities as an innocent child, and now he would be furthermore bewildered. We came to the Shloka 18. Tata Krishno mudam kartu tasma kshana tasya cha ubayayita matmana chakre vishuktradishwaraha. Thereafter, just to create pleasure both for Brahma and for the mothers of the calves and covered boys, Krishna, the creator of the entire cosmic manifestation, expanded himself as calves and boys. Although Brahma was already entangled in bewilderment, he wanted to show his power to covered boys. But after he took away the boys and their calves and returned to his abode, Krishna created further astonishment for Brahma. And for the mothers of the boys, by establishing the lunch pastimes in the forest again and replacing all the calves and boys just as they had appeared before. According to the Vedas, Ekam Bahu Sansham, Ekam Bahu Syam. The personality of Godhead can become many, many millions upon millions of calves and covered boys, as he did not bewilder Brahma more and more. By his Vasudeva feature, Krishna simultaneously expanded himself into the exact number of missing covered boys and the calves. With their exact bodily features, their particular types of hands, legs, and other limbs, their sticks, bugles, and flutes, their lunch bags, their particular types of dress and ornaments, placed in various ways. In their names, ages, and forms, and their special activities and characteristics, by expanding himself in this way, beautiful Krishna proved the statement of Samagra Jagd Vishnu Mayam. Lord Vishnu is all pervading, as stated in Brahma Samhita. Advaitam Achyutam Anandam Anantarupam. Adyam Purana Purusham Nava Yuva Nava Yuvanam Cha. Krishna Paramam Brahma, the Supreme Person of Godhead, is Adyam, the beginning of everything. He is Adi Purusham, the ever youthful original person. He can expand himself in more forms than one imagines. His original form as Krishna. Therefore, he is called Achyuta. This is the Supreme Person of Godhead. Sarvam Vishnumayam Jagat. Sarvam Kalva Idam Brahma. Krishna thus proved that he is everything, that he can become everything, but that still he is personally different from everything. Mata sthani sarva bhutani nacha thesva avastitaha. This is the Krishna who is understood by Achintya, Bheda Beda, Achintya Beda Beda Tattva philosophy. Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Krishna is always complete, and although he can create millions of universes, all of them full in all appearances, he remains as apparent as ever, without any change. He remains as apparent as ever, without any change, Advaitam. This is explained by different Vaishnava Acharyas through philosophies such as Vishuddhadvaita, Visishtadvaita, Dvaitadvaita. There are so many Advaita philosophy. Vishuddhadvaita, Visishtadvaita, Dvaitadvaita, Dvaitadvaita. Therefore, one must learn about Krishna from the Acharyas. Acharyavan Purusho Veda. One who follows the path of the Acharya knows things as they are. Such a person can know Krishna as he is, at least to some extent. And as soon as one understands Krishna's Janma Karma Chame Divyam Evam E Eti Advataha, one is liberated from literal marriage. Now, expanding himself so as to appear as all the cows and covered boys, all of them as they were, and at the same time appear as their leader Krishna entered Vrajabhumi, the land of his father Nanda Maharaja, just as he usually did while enjoying their company. Krishna usually stayed in the forest and pasturing ground, taking care of the calves and cows with his associates with the covered boys. Now, what the original group had been taken away by Brahma, Krishna himself assumed the forms of every member of the group without anyone's program, without anyone's knowledge. Even the knowledge of Balarama had continued to the usual program. He was ordering his friends to do this and that. He was controlling the calves and going into the forest to search for them when they went astray, allured by new grass. But these calves and boys were he himself. This was Krishna's inconceivable. This was Krishna's inconceivable potency, as explained by Shuka Maharshi. Krishna are the same. Radha and Krishna are the same. Krishna, by expanding his pleasure potency, becomes Radharani. The same pleasure potency, Ananda Chinmaya Rasa, was expanded by Krishna when he himself became all the calves and boys who enjoyed potency. O Maharaja Parikshit, Krishna, who had divided himself as different calves and also as different covered boys, entered a different cowsheds as the calves and then different homes as different boys. Krishna had many, many friends, of whom Sridhama, Sudhama, Subala were prominent. Thus Krishna himself became Sridhama, Subala and Sudhama and entered their respective houses with their respective calves. The mothers of the boys, upon hearing the sounds of the flutes and bugles being played by their sons, immediately rose from their household tasks, lifted their boys. The mothers of the boys, upon hearing the sounds of the flutes and bugles being played by their sons, immediately rose from their household tasks, lifted their boys onto their laps, embraced them with both arms, and began to feed them with their breast milk, which flowed forth because of extreme love and specifically for Lord Krishna. Actually, Krishna is everything, but at that time, expressing extreme love and affection, they took special pleasure in feeding Krishna, the Parabrahman, because Krishna became all the covered boys and all the calves. That's how they are feeding other boys, thinking they're sons, but they are Krishna. The Parabrahman, the Krishna drank the milk from his respective mothers as if it were a nectarian beverage. Although all the elderly gopis knew that Krishna was the son of Mother Yashoda, they still desired, if Krishna had become my son, I would also have taken care of him. This was their inner ambition. Now, in order to please them, Krishna personally took the role of their sons and fulfilled their desire. They enhanced their special love for Krishna by embracing him and feeding him. And Krishna tasted their breast milk to be just like a sectarian beverage. While thus bewildering Brahma, he enjoyed the special transcendental pleasure created by Yogamaya between all Krishna by embracing him and feeding him, and Krishna tasted their breast milk also, to be just like a nectarian beverage. While thus bewildering Brahma, he enjoyed the special transcendental pleasure created by Yogamaya between all the other mothers and himself. Thereafter, O Maharaja Parikshit, as required according to the scheduled round of his pastimes, Krishna returned in the evening, entered the house of each of the cowherd boys, and engaged exactly like the former boys, thus enlivening their mothers with the transcendental pleasures. The mothers took care of the boys by massaging them with oil, bathing them, smearing their bodies with sandalwood pulp, decorating them with ornaments, chanting protective mantras, decorating their bodies with tilak, and giving them food in this way. The mother served Krishna personally. This is the shloka 24th. Gavastato gostamupetya satparam hunkara goshai parihota sangatan swakan swaktan stuka ratarana payayan muhurlihantya stravadausasopayaha. Thereafter, all the cows entered their different sheds and began mooing loudly, calling for their respective calves. When the calves arrived, the mothers began licking the cows' bodies again and again, profusely feeding them with the milk flowing from their milk bags. All the dealings between the calves and their respective mothers taking care of them were enacted by Krishna himself. All the dealings between the calves and their respective mothers taking care of them were enacted by Krishna himself. Previously, from the very beginning, the gopis had motherly affection for Krishna. Indeed, their affection for Krishna exceeded even their affection for their own sons. In displaying their affection, they had thus distinguished between Krishna and their sons, but now that distinction disappeared, because their sons also behave like Krishna now. The distinction between one's own son and another's sons is not unnatural. Many elderly women have motherly affection for the sons of others. They observe distinctions. However, between those other sons of others, motherly affection for the sons of others, they observe distinctions. However, between those other sons and their own, But now the elderly gopis could not distinguish between their own sons and Krishna, as imagining Krishna became their own sons in the other form. For since their own sons had been taken by Brahma, Krishna had expanded as their sons, therefore their extra affection for their sons, who were now Krishna himself. Therefore, their extra affection for their sons, who were now Krishna himself, was due to bewilderment resembling that of Brahma. Previously, the mothers of Sridhama, Sudhama, Subala, and Krishna's other friends did not have the same affection for one's other sons. But now the gopis treated all the boys as their own. Shuka Maharshi therefore wanted to explain this increment of affection in terms of Krishna's bewilderment of Brahma, the gopis, and the cows, everyone else. Although the inhabitants of Rajabhumi, the cowherd men and cowherd women, previously had more affection for Krishna than for their own children, now for 1 year, their affection for their own sons continuously increased, for Krishna had now become their sons. There was no limit to the increment of their affection for their sons, who are now Krishna. Every day they found new inspiration for loving their children as much as they loved Krishna. In this way, Lord Sri Krishna, having himself become the cowherd boys and group of cows, maintained himself by himself. Thus he continued his pastimes both in Vrindavana and in the forest for 1 year. One day, 5 or 6 nights before the completion of the year, Krishna, tending the cows, entered the forest along with Balarama. Up to this time, even Balarama was captivated by the bewilderment that covered Brahma. Even Balarama did not know that all the cows and cowherd boys were expansion of Krishna, or that he himself was also an expansion of Krishna. This was disclosed to Balarama just 5 or 6 days before the completion of the year. Thereafter, while pasturing atop Govardhana hill, the cows looked down to find some green grass and saw their calves pasturing near Vrindavana, not very far away. When the cows saw their own calves from the top of Govardhana hill, they forgot themselves and their caretakers because of increased affection, and although the path was very rough, they ran toward their cows with a great anxiety, each running as if with one pair of legs, their milk bags full and flowing with milk, their heads and tails raised, and their humps moving with their necks. They ran forcefully until they reached their calves to feed them. Generally, the calves and cows are pastured separately. The elderly men take care of the cows, and small children look after the calves. This time, however, the cows immediately forgot their position as soon as they saw the calves below Govardhana hill, and they ran with great force, their tails erect and their front and fine legs joined, until they reached their calves. The cows had given birth to the new calves, but while coming down from Govardhana hill, the cows, because of increased affection for the older calves, allowed the older cows to drink milk from their milk bags, and then began licking the cows' bodies in anxiety, as though the cows had given birth to new calves, but while coming down from Govardhana hill, the cows, because of increased affection for the older calves, allowed the older cows to drink milk from their milk bags, and then began licking the cows' bodies in anxiety, as if wanting to swallow them. The cowherd men, having been unable to check the cows from going to their calves, felt simultaneously ashamed and angry. They crossed the rough road with great difficulty, but when they came down and saw their own sons, they were overwhelmed by great affection. Everyone was increasing in affection for Krishna. When the cowherd men coming down from the hill saw their own sons, who were no one else than Krishna, their affection was increased. At that time, all the thoughts of the cowherd men merged in the mellow of paternal love, which was aroused by the sight of their sons. Experiencing a great attraction, their anger completely disappearing, they lifted their sons, embraced them in their arms, and enjoyed the highest pleasure of smelling their sons' heads. After Brahma stole the original covered boys and calves, Krishna expanded himself to become the boys and calves again. Therefore, because the boys were actually Krishna's expansion, the covered men were especially attracted to them. At first, the covered men who were on top of the hill were angry, but because of Krishna, the boys were extremely attractive. The boys were extremely attractive, and therefore the covered men immediately came down from the hill with a special affection. Thereafter, the elderly covered men, having obtained a great feeling from embracing their sons gradually and with great difficulty and reluctance, ceased embracing them and returned to the forest. But as the men remembered their sons, tears began to roll down their eyes. In the beginning, the covered men were angry that the cows were being attracted by the calves. But when the men came down from the hill, they were themselves were attracted by their sons, and therefore the men embraced them. To embrace one's son and smell has had or symptoms of affection. So this is the story of Brahma stealing the calves and boys. Because of an increased affection, the cows had constant attachment even to those calves that were grown up and had stopped sucking milk from their mothers. When Balarama saw this attachment, he was unable to understand the reason for it, and thus he began to consider as follows. The cows had younger calves who had started sucking milk from their mothers, and some of the cows had newly given birth, but now because of the love, the cows enthusiastically showed their affection for the older cows which had left off milking. These calves were grown up, but still the mothers wanted to feed them. Thereafter, therefore, Balarama was a little surprised and he wanted to inquire from Krishna about the reason for their behavior. The mothers were actually more anxious to feed the older calf. Although the new calves were present, because of the older calves were expansion of Krishna, these surprising events were taking place by the manipulation of Yogamaya. There are two Mayas working under the direction of Krishna. Mahamaya, the energy of material world, and Yogamaya, the energy of spiritual world, expansion of Krishna. These uncommon events were taking place because of the influence of Yogamaya from the very beginning. These uncommon events were taking place because of the influence of Yogamaya. From the very day in which Brahma stole the calves and boys, Yogamaya acted in such a way that residents of Vrindavana, including even Lord Balarama, could not understand how Yogamaya was working and causing such uncommon things to happen. But as Yogamaya gradually acted, Balarama in particular was able to understand what was happening, and therefore he inquired from Krishna. What is the wonderful phenomena? The affection of all the inhabitants of Raja, including me, toward these boys and calves is increasing as never before. Just like our affection for Lord Krishna, the super soul of all living entities. Who is this mystic power, and where has she come from? Is she a demigod or a demoness? She must be the illusory energy of my master Lord Krishna, for who else can bewilder me? Balarama was surprised and he was asking Krishna, what is happening? Thinking in this way, Lord Balrama was able to see with the eye of transcendental knowledge that all these calves and Krishna's friends were all expansion of form of Krishna. So Balaram came to know that is the expansion of Krishna only, these boys and cows. Lord Balarama said, O Supreme Controller, these boys are not great demigods, as I previously thought, nor these cows great sages like Narada. Now I can see that you alone are manifesting yourself in all varieties of difference. Although one, you are existing in the different forms of the cows and boys, please briefly explain this to me. Having thus been requested by Lord Balarama, Krishna explained the whole situation and Balarama understood it. Inquiring from Krishna about the actual situation, Lord Balarama said, My dear Krishna, in the beginning I thought that all these cows, calves and covered boys were either great sages and saintly persons or are the gods from heaven. But at the present, it appears that they are actually your expansion. They're all you. You yourself are playing as the calves and cows and boys. What is the mystery of this situation? So Balarama was keep on asking, what is this mystery? Why this expansion of Krishna is taking place? When Lord Balarama returned after a moment of time had passed, according to his own measurement, he saw that although by human measurement a complete year had passed, Lord Krishna, after all that time, was engaged just as before in playing with the boys and calves who were as expansion. Lord Balarama had gone away for only a moment of his time, but when he returned, a year of human time had passed. On different planets, the calculation of time is different. To give an example, a man-made satellite may orbit the Earth in an hour and 25 minutes and thus complete one full day, although a day ordinarily takes 24 hours for those living in Earth. Therefore, what was but a moment for Balarama was 1 year. But by the arrangement of Yogamaya, no one could understand this but Balarama. Lord Brahma thought, whatever boys and calves there were in Gokulla, I have kept them sleeping on the red of my mystic potency, and to this very day they have not yet risen again. So Brahma started worrying. A similar number of boys and calves have been playing with Krishna for one whole year, and they are different from the ones illusioned by mystic potency. Who are they? Where do they come from? Although appearing like calves, cows, and covered boys, these were all Vishnu. Actually, they were Vishnu Tattva and not Jiva Tattva. Brahma was surprised. The original covered boys and cows, he thought, are still where I put them last year. So who is it? Who is it that is now keeping company with Krishna exactly as before? Where have they come from? Brahma was surprised that this mystic power had been neglected. Without touching the original cows and covered boys kept by Brahma, Krishna had already. The Brahma's mystic power was superseded. The Lord Brahma, thinking for a long time, tried to distinguish between those two sets of boys and two sets of cows and calves who were each separately existing. He tried to understand who was real and who was not real, but he could not understand at all. Brahma was puzzled. The original boys and calves are still sleeping as I woke them, kept them, he thought. But another set is here playing with Krishna. How this has happened? Brahma could not grasp what was happening, which boys were real and which were not real. Brahma was unable to come to any definite conclusion. Brahma was unable to come to any definite conclusion. He pondered the matter for a long while. How can there be two sets of cows and boys? Or has Krishna created ones lying asleep? Or are both merely creations of Krishna? Brahma thought about the subject in many different ways. After I go to the cave and see that the boys and cows are still there, does Krishna go to them, talk to them, take them away and put them here so that I come here and see them. And does Krishna then take them from here and put them there? Brahma could not figure out how there could be two sets of cows and cowherd boys exactly alike. Although thinking, he cannot understand at all. Thus because Lord Brahma wanted to mystify the all-pervading Lord Krishna, who can never be mystified, but who, on the contrary, mystifies the entire universe. He himself was put into bewilderment by his own mystic power. As the darkness of snow on a dark night and the light of a glowing worm in the light of the day have no value, the mystic power of an inferior person who tries to use it against a person of great power is unable to accomplish the power of that inferior person is diminished. So Lord Brahma realized they are all Krishna's expansion later. Then while Lord Brahma looked on, all the cows and the boys tending them immediately appeared to have complexions the color of bluish raincoats and to be dressed in yellow silken garments. While Brahma was contemplating, all the cows and covered boys immediately transferred into Vishnumurtis. Having bluish complexions and wearing yellow garments, Brahma was contemplating his own power and the immense, unlimited power of Krishna. But before he could come to conclusion, he saw this immediate transformation. All those personalities had 4 arms holding conch shell, disc, mace, and lotus flower in their hands. They wore helmets on their heads, earrings on their ears, and garlands of forest flowers around their neck. On the upper portion of the right side of their chest was the emblem of the goddess of fortune. Furthermore, they wore armlets on their arms, the kaustubham around their necks, which were marked with 3 lines like a conch shell, and bracelets on their wrists, with bangles on their ankles, ornaments in their feet, sacred belts around their waist. They all appear beautiful. So all the covered boys came in the form of Vishnu, Chaturbhuja, Darshana, and Brahma was surprised. All the Vishnu forms had 4 arms with conch shell and other articles, but these characters are also possessed by those who attained Saurabhya Mukti in Vaikuntha and who consequently have arms exactly like the form of the Lord. However, these Vishnu forms appearing before Lord Brahma also possessed the mark of Srivatsa and the Kaustubhajam. Kaustubhajam, which are special characters possessed only by the Supreme Lord Vishnu himself. This proves that all these boys and cows were in fact directly expansion of Vishnu, the personality of Godhead, not merely his associates of Vaikuntha. Vishnu himself is included within the Krishna. All these appearances of Vishnu are already present in Krishna, and consequently, for Krishna to demonstrate to all the appearances of Vishnu are already present in Krishna, and consequently, for Krishna to demonstrate so many Vishnu forms was actually not very astonishing. Srivatsa mark is described by the Vaishnava Susani as being a curl of fine yellow hair on the upper portion of the right side of the Lord Vishnu's chest. This mark is not for ordinary devotees. It is a special mark of Vishnu or Krishna. Every part of their bodies, from their feet to the top of their heads, was fully decorated with fresh, tender garlands of tulsi leaves offered by devotees engaged in worshipping the Lord by the greatest pious activities, namely hearing and chanting. Those Vishnu forms, by their pure smiling, which resemble the increasing light of the moon, and by the sidelong glances of their reddish eyes, created and protected the desires of their own devotees, as if by the modes of passion and goodness. Those Vishnu forms blessed the devotees with their clear glances and smiles, which resemble the increasingly full light of the moon. Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam. As maintainers, they glanced upon their devotees, embracing them and protecting them by smiling. Their smiles resembled the mode of goodness, protecting all the desires of the devotees, and the glancing of their eyes resembled the mode of passion. Actually, in this verse, the word Raja means not passion but affection. In the material world, Rajoguna is a passion. Affection is contaminated by Rajoguna and Tamoguna, but in the Shuddha Sattva, the affection that maintains the devotees is transcendental. The word Swakaratmam refers to the great desires. As mentioned in this verse, the glance of the Lord, Vishnu, creates the desires of the devotees. A pure devotee, however, has no desires. Therefore, Sanatana Goswami comments that because the desires of devotees whose attention is fixed on Krishna have already been fulfilled, the Lord's sidelong glances create variegated desires in relation to Krishna and devotion service. In the material world, desire is a product of Rajoguna and Tamoguna, but desire in the spiritual world gives rise to a variety of everlasting transcendental service. Thus, the word Swakaratmam refers to eagerness to serve Krishna. In Vrindavana, there is a place where there was no temple, but a devotee desired, let there be a temple and seva, devotion service. Therefore, what was once an empty corner has now become a place of pilgrimage. Such are the desires of the devotees. All beings, both moving and non-moving, from the four-headed Lord Brahma down to the most insignificant living entity, had taken forms and were differently worshipping those Vishnumurtis according to their respective capacities, with various means of worship such as dancing and singing. All the Vishnumurtis were surrounded by the opulences headed by Anima Siddhi, by the mystic potencies headed by Aja, and by the 24 elements for the creation of material world headed by the Mahatattva. In this verse, the word Mahima Bhi means Aishwarya or opulence. The Supreme Personality of Godhead can do whatever he likes. That is his Aishwarya. No one can command him, but he can command everyone. Sada Aishwarya Purnam. The Lord is full in 6 opulences. Yoga Siddhis, the perfections of yoga, such as the ability to become smaller than the smallest Anima Siddhi, bigger than the biggest Mahima Siddhi, and are present in Lord Vishnu also. The 24 elements mentioned are the 5 working senses, Pancha Karmendriya, the 5 senses for obtaining knowledge, Pancha Janendriya, the 5 gross material elements, Pancha Mahabhuta, the 5 sense of objects, Pancha Tanmatra, the mind is Mana, the false ego is Ahankara, the Mahatattva and material nature Prakriti. All 24 of these elements are employed for the manifestation of this material world. The Mahatattva is divided into different subcategories, but originally it is called Mahatattva. Then Lord Brahma saw that Kala, the time factor, Swabhava, one's own nature of association, Samskara, reformation, Kama, desire, Karma, fruitive activity, and the Gunas, the 3 modes of material nature, their own independence being completely subordinate to the potency of the Lord, had all taken forms and were also worshipping those Vishnumurtis. No one but Vishnu has any independence. If we develop consciousness of this fact, then we are in actual Krishna consciousness. We should always remember that Krishna is the only supreme master and that everyone else is his servant. Ekala Ishvara Krishna, Arasava Pratya. Be one even Narayana and Lord Shiva. Everyone is subordinate to Krishna. Shiva Virichatutam. Shiva Virichatutam. Even Balarama is subordinate to Krishna. This is a fact. One should understand that no one is independent, for everything is part and parcel of Krishna and is acting and moving by the supreme desire of Krishna. This understanding of this consciousness this understanding is the consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. A person who considers the gods like Brahma and Shiva to be unequal to with Narayana must certainly be considered an offender. No one can compare to Narayana or Krishna. Krishna is Narayana, Narayana is also Krishna. For Krishna is the original Narayana. Brahma himself addressed Krishna, Narayanas tvam na hi sarvadehanam. You are also Narayan. Indeed, you are the original Narayana. Kala or the time factor has many assistants, such as Swabhava, Samskara, Karma, Kama and Karma and Guna Swabhava are one's own nature, is formed according to the association of material qualities. Karnam Guna Sango Sya Asad Yoni Janmasu. Sat and Asat Swabhava. One is higher and another is lower. Varnashrama dharma, therefore, is essential for it can during the people to Sattva-guna. Tada Rajas Tamo Bhava Kama Lobho Dasya Cha. Ye. Tamoguna and Rajoguna increase lust and greed, which implicate living entity in such a way that he must exist in this material world in many, many forms. That is very dangerous. One should therefore be brought to Sattva-guna by the establishment of Varnashrama dharma and should develop the Brahminical qualifications of being very neat and clean, rising early in the morning and seeing Mangala Aratrika and so on. In this way, one should stay in Sattva-guna. And then one cannot be influenced by the Tamoguna and Rajoguna. Vishnumurtis all had eternal unlimited forms, full of knowledge and bliss, and existing beyond the influence of time. Their great glory was not even to be touched by the jnanis engaged in studying the Upanishads. Mere Shastra Jnana or knowledge in the Vedas does not help anyone understand the personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. Only one who is favored or shown mercy by Lord can understand him. This is also explained in Upanishad, Mundoka Upanishad. The Supreme Lord is not obtained by expert explanation, by vast intelligence, or even by much hearing. He is obtained only by one whom he himself chooses. To such a person, he manifests his own form. One description given in Brahman is Satyam Brahma Ananda Rupam. Brahman is the absolute truth and complete Ananda or bliss. The forms of Vishnu, the supreme Brahman, were one, but they were manifested differently. The followers of the Upanishads, however, cannot understand the varieties of manifested by Brahman. This proves that Brahman and Paramatma can actually be understood only through devotion, as confirmed by the Lord himself in Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhaktyayam ekaya grahya bhaga. To establish that Brahman indeed has transcendental form, Sridhara Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakura gives various quotations for the Shastras. In the Shvetashtottara Upanishad, the The Supreme is described as Aditya Varanam, Tamasa Prasthat. Aditya Varanam, Tamasa Prasthat. He whose self-manifest form is luminous like the sun and transcendental to the darkness of ignorance. Ananda Matram, Ajaram, Purnam, Ekam, Santam, Bahuda, Drishyamanam. The Supreme is blissful with no tinge of unhappiness. Although he is the oldest, he never ages. And although one, he is experienced in different forms. Sarve Nityam Shashvata Cha Dehasya Tasya Paratmanamaha. All the forms of the Supreme Person are eternal. Mahavaraha Purana. In Mahavaraha Purana, it says all the forms of Supreme Person are eternal. The Supreme Person has a form with hands and legs and other personal features, but his hands and legs are not material. Bhaktas know that the form of Krishna or Brahman is not at all material. Rather, Brahman has a transcendental form, and when one is absorbed in it, being fully developed in bhakti, one can understand him. The Mayavadis, however, cannot understand this transcendental form, for they think that is material. Transcendental forms of Supreme Personality of Godhead in his person are so great that the impersonal followers of the Upanishads cannot reach the platform of knowledge to understand them. Particularly, the transcendental forms of the Lord are beyond the reach of the impersonalist, who can only understand through the studies of the Upanishads that the absolute truth is not matter and that absolute truth is not materially restricted by limited potency. And although Krishna cannot be seen through the Upanishads, in some places it is said that Krishna can in fact be known in this way. Upanishadam Purusham. He is known by Upanishads. This means that when one is purified by Vedic knowledge, one is then allowed to enter into devotional understanding. Madhabhaktim Lavate Param. Thus, Lord Brahma saw the Supreme Brahman, by whose energy this entire universe, with its moving and non-moving living beings, is manifested. He also saw at the same time all the calves and boys as the Lord's expansion. By this incident, Lord Brahma was able to see how Krishna maintains the entire universe in different ways. It is because of Krishna manifests everything in that everything is visible. Then, by the power of the effulgency of those Vishnu Murtis, Lord Brahma, his 11 senses jolted by astonishment and stunned by transcendental bliss, became silent, just like a child's clay doll in the presence of the village deity. Brahma was stunned because of transcendental bliss. Mukhyantiyat Surayaha. In this astonishment, all his senses were stunned, and he was unable to say or do anything. Brahma had considered himself absolute, thinking himself the only powerful deity, but now his pride was subdued, and he again became merely one of the gods, an important god, of course, but nonetheless, Brahma therefore cannot be compared to God Krishna or Narayana. It is forbidden to compare Narayana even to other gods like Brahma and Shiva, what to speak of others. The Supreme Brahman is beyond mental calculation. He is self-manifest, existing in his own bliss, and he is beyond the material energy. He is known by the crushed jewels of the Vedas by refutation of irrelevant knowledge. Thus, in relation to the Supreme Brahman, the personality of Godhead, whose glory had been shown by the manifestation of all the four armored forms of Vishnu, Lord Brahma, the Lord Saraswati, was mystified. What is this? He thought. And then he was not being able to see. Lord Krishna, understanding Brahma's position, then at once removed the curtain of Yogamaya from Brahma's front. Brahma was completely mystified. He could not understand what he was seeing, and then he was not even able to see. Lord Krishna, understanding Brahma's position, then removed that Yogamaya's covering. In this verse, Brahma is referred to as Airesha. Aira means Saraswati. Aira means Saraswati, the goddess of learning. The Airesha is her husband, Lord Brahma. Brahma, therefore, is most intelligent. But even Brahma, the Lord Saraswati, was bewildered about Krishna. Although he tried, he could not understand Lord Krishna. In the beginning, the boys, the calves, and Krishna himself had been revered by Yogamaya. Which later displayed the second set of calves and boys, who were Krishna's expansions, and which then displayed so many four-armed forms. Now seeing Brahma's bewilderment, Lord Krishna caused the disappearance of that Yogamaya. One may think that Maya taken away by Lord Krishna was Mahamaya, but Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakura comments that it was Yogamaya, the potency by which Krishna is sometimes manifest, sometimes not manifest. The potency which covers the actual reality and displays something unreal is Mahamaya, but the potency by which absolute truth is sometimes manifest, sometimes not is Yogamaya. Therefore, in this word, the word Aja refers a Yogamaya. Krishna's energy, his Maya Shakti and Swarupa Shakti is one, but it is manifested in varieties. Purusha Shaktir Vividya Maividya Shruyate. Shvetastotra Upanishad. The difference between the Vaishnavas and Mayavadis is that Mayavadis say that this is Maya is one, whereas Vaishnavas recognize its varieties. There is unity in variety. For example, in one tree, there are varieties of leaves, fruits, and flowers. Varieties of energy are required for performing the varieties of activity within the creation. To give for another example, in a machine, all the parts may be iron, but the machine includes varied activities. Although the whole machine is iron, one part works in one way and other parts work in another ways. One who does not know how the machine is working may say that it is all iron. Nonetheless, in spite of its being iron, the machine has different elements, all working differently to accomplish the purpose for which the machine was made. One wheel runs this way, another wheel runs that way, functioning naturally in such a way that the work of the machine goes on. Consequently, we give different names to the different parts of the machine, saying this is a wheel, this is a screw, this is a spindle, this is the lubrication, and so on. Similarly, explained the Vedas. Krishna is powerful, he is variegated, and thus the same Shakti or potency works in varied ways. Vividha means varieties. There is a unity in variety. Thus, Yogamaya and Mahamaya are among the varied individual parts of the same one potency. And all these individual potencies work in their own varied ways. Samvit, Sandhini, and Aghladini potency is Krishna's potency for existence. His potency for knowledge and his potency for pleasure are distinct from Yogamaya, which is each is an individual potency. Aghladini potency is Radharani. As Swarupa Damodara Goswami has explained, Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikiktiri Hadini Saktir Asmat. The Aghladini Sakti is manifested by Radharani, but Krishna and Radharani are the same, although one is potent, the other is potency. Brahma was mystified about Krishna's opulence because this opulence was atarkya or inconceivable. With one's limited sense, one cannot argue about that which is inconceivable. The soul can never be cut into pieces by any weapon, nor can it be burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. Krishna says it is not burned by fire, therefore one has to imagine what it is that is not burned by fire. This is a negative definition. That's Atma. Lord Brahma's external consciousness then revived, and he stood up, just like a dead man coming back to life. Opening his eyes with great difficulty, He saw the universe along with himself. We actually do not die. At death, we are merely kept inert for some time, just as during sleep. At night, we sleep and all our activities stop. But as soon as we rise, our memory immediately returns and we think, oh, where am I? What do I have to do? This is called Sapotitta Nyaya. Suppose we die. Die means that we become inert for some time and then again become our activities. This takes place life after life according to our karma, our activities, and swabhava, our nature by association. Now, in the human life, if we prepare ourselves by beginning the activity of our spiritual life, we return to our real life and attain perfection. Otherwise, according to karma, swabhava, prakriti, and so on, our varieties of life and activity continue, and so also do our birth and death. As explained with Bhakti Vedanta, Bhakti Vinod Thakura, Mayara Vase Echa Bise Kacha Abdubu Bahi. My dear brothers, why are you being washed away by the waves of Maya? One should come to the spiritual platform, then one's activities will be permanent. Krita Punya Punaha Punjaha. This stage is attained after one accumulates the results of pious activities for many, many lives. Janma Koti Sukritir Na Labhyathe. The Krishna consciousness movement wants to stop Koti Janma, repeated birth and death. In one birth, one should rectify everything and come to permanent life. This is Krishna consciousness. Then looking in all directions, Lord Brahma immediately saw Vrindavana before him, filled with trees, which were the means of livelihood for the inhabitants and which were equally pleasing in all seasons. Vrindavana is the transcendental abode of Lord Krishna, where there is no hunger, anger, or thirst. Though naturally inimical, both human beings and fierce animals live there together in transcendental friendship. The word Vana means forest. We are afraid of the forest and do not wish to go there. But in Vrindavana, the forest animals are so as good as a god, for they have no enemy. Even in this material world, in this forest, the animals live together. When they go to drink water, they do not attack anyone. Envy develops because of sense gratification. But in Vrindavana, there is no sense gratification, for the only aim is Krishna satisfaction. Even in the material world, the animals in Vrindavana are not envious of sadhus who live there. The sadhus keep cows and supply milk to the tigers, saying, come here and take a little milk. Thus, envy and malice are unknown in Vrindavana. That is the difference between Vrindavana and the ordinary world. We are horrified to hear the name of Vana, the forest, but in Vrindavana, there is no such horror. Everyone there is happy by pleasing Krishna. Krishna to Kirtana Gana Narana Nartana Paro. Whether Goswami or a tiger or other furious animal, everyone's business is the same, to please Krishna. Even the tigers are also devotees. This is a specific qualification of Vrindavana. In Vrindavana, everyone is happy. The calf is happy, the cat is happy, the dog is happy, the man is happy. Everyone wants to serve Krishna in a different capacity, and thus there is no envy. One may sometimes think that monkeys in Vrindavana are envious because they cause mischief and steal food. But in Vrindavana, we found that the monkeys are allowed to take butter, which Krishna himself distributes. Krishna personally demonstrates that everyone has the right to live. This is Vrindavana's life. Why should I live and you die? No, that is material life. The inhabitants of Vrindavana think whatever is given by Krishna, let us divine and take it as prasada and eat it. This mentality cannot appear all of a sudden, but it will gradually develop with Krishna consciousness. By sadhana, one can come to this platform. In the material world, one may collect funds all over the world in order to distribute food freely, and those to whom the food is given may not even feel appreciative. The value of Krishna consciousness, however, will gradually be very much appreciated. For instance, one of our article about the temple of Hare Krishna movement in Durban, South Africa. The Durban Post reported all the devotees here are very active in the service of Lord Krishna, and the results are obvious to see happiness, good health, peace of mind, and the development of all good qualities. This is the nature of Vrindavana. Harava abhaktasya kutamahad gunaha. Without Krishna consciousness, happiness is impossible. One may struggle, but one cannot have happiness. We are therefore trying to give human society the opportunity for a life of happiness, good health, peace of mind, and all good qualities through the good consciousness. The Lord Brahma saw the absolute truth, who is one without a second, and who possesses full knowledge, and who is unlimited, assuming the role of child in a family of cowherd men and standing all alone, just as before, with a morsel of food in his hand, searching everywhere for the calves and his covered friends. After seeing this, Lord Brahma hastily got down from his swan carrier, fell down like a golden rod, touched the lotus feet of Lord Krishna with the tips of his 4 crowns in his head. Offering his obeisancy, he bathed the feet of Krishna with the water of his tears of joy. Lord Brahma bowed down like a stick, and because Lord Brahma's complexion is golden, he appeared to be like a golden stick laying down before Lord Krishna. When one falls down before a superior, just like a stick, one's offering obedience is called dandavat. Danda means stick, and vat means like. It is not that one should simply say dandavat, rather than one must fall down. Thus Brahma fell down, touching his foreheads to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, and his crying in ecstasy is to be regarded as Abhisheka, bathing ceremony of Krishna's lotus feet. He who appeared before Brahma as a human child was in fact the absolute truth, Parabrahmam, Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavan iti Shabdaveti. Supreme Lord is Narakriti, that is, he resembles a human being. It is not that he is 4-armed Chaturbahu. Narayana is Chaturbahu, but the Supreme Person resembles a human being. This is also confirmed in the Bible, where it is said that man was made in the image of God. Lord Brahma saw that Krishna in his form as covered boy was Parabrahman, the root cause of everything, but was now appearing as a human child, loitering in Vrindavana with a morsel of food in his hand. Astonished, Lord Brahma hastily got down from his own swan carrier and let his body fall to the earth. Usually, the gods never touch the ground, but Lord Brahma, voluntarily giving up his prestige as a god, bowed down on the ground before Krishna. Although Brahma has one head in each direction, he voluntarily brought all his 4 heads to the ground and touched Krishna's feet with the tips of his 4 helmets. Although his intelligence works in every direction, he surrendered everything before the boy Krishna. It is mentioned that Brahma washed the feet of Krishna with his tears, and here the word Sujalahi indicates that his tears were purified. As soon as bhakti is present, everything is purified. Rising and falling again and again, the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. For a long time, Lord Brahma remembered over and over the Lord's greatness he had just seen. Then rising very gradually and wiping his 2 eyes, Lord Brahma looked up at Mukunda. Lord Brahma, his head bent low, his mind concentrated, and his body trembling, very humbly began with faltering words to offer praises to Lord Krishna. Brahma, being very joyful, began to shed tears, and he washed the feet of Lord Krishna with his tears. Repeatedly he fell and rose. He recalled the wonderful activities of the Lord after repeating obeisances for a long time. Brahma stood up and smeared his hands over his eyes. Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakura comments that the word lakane indicates that which has 2 hands he wiped the 2 eyes on each of his 4 faces. Seeing the Lord before him, Brahma began to offer prayers with great humility, respect, and attention. Thus ends the purports of the 10th canto, 13th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Stealing of the Boys and Calves of Brahma. This is the chapter 13th, in which Lord Brahma hides the calves and covered boys of Vrindavana, and he's checking how they are going to be cleverly going to recognize. But Lord Krishna expanded himself, as many boys and as many calves were there, and then they were going on like that for 1 year. This is the big surprise. The expansion of Lord Krishna was going to stay for 1 year. This is the biggest surprise. Om Keshwaya Namaha, Om Narayana Namaha, Om Madhavaya Namaha, Om Govindaya Namaha, Om Vishnuve Namaha, Matsudharaya Namaha, Trivikramaya Namaha, Vamanaya Namaha, Sridharaya Namaha, Hrishikeshaya Namaha, Padmanabhaya Namaha, Damodaraya Namaha, Sankarshnaya Namaha, Vasudevaya Namaha, Pradyumnaya Namaha, Niruddhaya Namaha, Purushottamaya Namaha, Dokshaya Namaha, Narasimhaya Namaha, Achyutaya Namaha, Janardhanaya Namaha, Upendraya Namaha, Hare Namaha, Sri Krishnaya Namaha, Sri Krishnaya Namaha, Sri Krishnaya Namaha. Sri Krishna Yanama, Sri Krishna Yanama. I'll just giving a small summary of this 13th chapter. I'll give a summary again. Lord Brahma's attempt to take away the calves and covered boys. It also describes the bewilderment of Lord Brahma and finally the clearance of his illusion. Although the incident concerning Aghasura had been performed 1 year before, when the covered boys were 5 years old. When they were 6 years old, they said, it happened today. What happened was this. After killing Aghasura, Krishna, along with his associates, the covered boys, went for a picnic within the forest. The cows, being allured by green grasses, gradually went far away, and therefore Krishna's associates became little agitated and wanted to bring back the cows. Krishna, however, encouraged the boys by saying, you take your lunch without being agitated. You take your food. I shall go and find the cows. Krishna said to them, and thus the Lord departed to looking for cows. And then, just to examine the potency of Krishna, Lord Brahma took away all the cows and covered boys and kept them in a secluded place. When Krishna was unable to find the cows and boys, he could understand that this was a trick performed by Brahma, then Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, in order to please Lord Brahma as well as his own associates and their mothers, expanded himself to become the calves and boys, exactly as they were before. In this way, he discovered another pastime. A special feature of this pastime was that the mothers of the covered boys thus became more attached to their respective sons, and the cows became more attached to their calves. After nearly a year, Balarama observed that all the covered boys and calves were expansions of Lord Krishna. Thus he inquired from Krishna and was informed of what had happened. When 1 full year had passed, Brahma returned and saw that Krishna was still engaged as usual with his friends and the calves and cows. Then Krishna exhibited all the calves and covered boys as 4 armed forms of Narayana. So Lord Krishna made all the covered boys and the calves became a 4 armed forms of Narayana. Brahma could then understand Krishna's potency, and he was astonished by the pastimes of Krishna. His worshipable Lord Krishna, however, bestowed his causeless mercy upon Brahma and released Brahma from his illusion. The Brahma fell on the feet of Lord Krishna and offers his opulences and submitted his prayers and to glorify the Supreme Godhead Krishna. That's how the 13th chapter finishes. Namostanantaya Sahasramurtaye Sahasrapadakshirabha Sahasranamne Purusharthe Sahasrakoti Yugadharane Namaha Sahasrakoti Yugadharane Namaha Akashat Paritamyata Agatsagaram Sarvadeva Namaskaraha Srikeshvam Srikeshvam Paridatyo Namaha सर्वभेदेषु पुण्यं सर्वतीर्थेषु यत्फलं तत्फलं पुष्माप्तिवासनात् वासुदेवस्य वासन्ते जयत्रयं सर्वभूतनिवासोऽसि वासुदेवनमस्ते कायेन वाचा मनसेन्द्रियैर्वा बुद्ध्यात्मना वा प्रकृते स्वभावा करोमि यद्यत् सकलं परस्मै नारायणायेति समर्पयामि नारायणायेति समर्पयामि नारायणायेति समर्पयामि हरि ओम तत्सत्।